It was a quiet autumn evening in Seoul. The sun had dipped below the horizon, and most of the city's lights were already flickering on. Inside a large house in the affluent Sinsadong district, a retired couple, Lee Deok-soo and his wife, Lee Yoon-ok, had gone to bed like any other night. Their life was stable, familiar, ordinary. But then, everything changed. A man stood inside their home, breathing silently. He did not rush. He did not hesitate. He did not shout. He raised his hand and struck, again and again, until both lives were gone. This was the first known murder carried out by a man who would later be called by investigators something chilling: the Raincoat Killer. Detectives arrived the next morning. There were no screams, no neighbors calling in panic, no sign of a violent break-in. Just two bodies and questions, too many questions. At first, the scene looked like a robbery gone wrong. But that explanation didn't fit. Nothing of considerable value had been taken. No jewelry, no money, no electronics. The wounds told a different story, one of intent, not of chaos. But at this point, police did not yet consider that a killer was on the loose. They believed these deaths might be connected, but they lacked proof. In the weeks that followed, another elderly person was found dead in a nearby neighborhood. Same situation, no forced entry, no obvious robbery. Then another, and then another. Police began to whisper about a pattern, but they still couldn't find a suspect. Then, the nature of the crimes changed. It was no longer only the elderly. A young woman, a massage worker in her early 30s, went missing. Concerned friends reported her disappearance. When officers searched her apartment, there were no signs of a struggle, no obvious break-in, just silence. And then more calls came. Bodies began to be discovered in the mountains near Seoul, wrapped in plastic, buried in shallow graves. Some showed signs of dismemberment. No longer just elderly, no longer just robbery. Now this was different. This was calculated. This was personal. This was frightening. The breakthrough came in an unexpected way. Massage parlor owners began reporting the same suspicious phone number. A number linked to several women who had disappeared. Police traced it. They put together a plan. They arranged an asterisk staged meeting, pretending to be someone else, in hopes that the owner of the number would show up. Plainclothes officers hid nearby. Then a man walked in, not panicked, not nervous, just calm, completely ordinary. But the officers knew this was their suspect. They arrested him. His name was Young-chul. In the interrogation room, a plain, cold room with bright lights, Yu was calm. He didn't tremble. He didn't cry. He didn't beg. He simply listened. When asked about the elderly victims, at first he denied everything. But when faced with evidence, phone logs, connections, burial sites in the temple forest, he began to speak. Not in fear, not in regret, just explanation. He said he studied his victims before killing them, sometimes watching for days. He said he did not kill because of money, but because of anger. He targeted wealthy elderly people because he believed they represented a life he had been denied. Then, when questioned about the women, he said he invited them to his home, engaged with them, then killed them afterward. He said he wrapped bodies in plastic, dismembered them, and buried them near the mountains. He even claimed that consuming some internal organs helped him clear his mind. Here S. what investigators learned about his motives. You grew up poor. He was bullied for his family's lack of money. He lived near wealthy homes and resented them deeply. Those feelings didn't fade. They hardened into hostility. He told investigators that he believed the wealthy got everything, and people like me got nothing. That resentment drove him to kill elderly, wealthy victims. People he believed represented the life he never had. After killing wealthy seniors, Yu's victim profile later shifted. He began targeting women, especially those with jobs similar to a former lover who had left him. That breakup and earlier troubles with his wife filled him with resentment toward women. Yu told police he killed some women not just randomly, but because of this retaliatory anger, a cruel attempt to punish those he felt had hurt him. Yu himself once said on camera, "Women shouldn't be sluts, and the rich should know what they've done." This statement reflects how he justified his actions in his mind, not out of confusion, not from illness, but out of resentment and hostility towards society, shaped over years. Before these murders, Yu had a long record, multiple convictions, theft, assault, fraud, years in prison. Each time he was released, he seemed more hardened, never rehabilitated, never corrected, just deeper into resent. A man shaped by hardship, but responsible for his choices. At least 20 victims were confirmed. Elderly citizens, young women, neighbors, people with families, people with dreams. Friends and relatives told reporters she wanted to buy a home. He helped kids cross the street every day. Ordinary people, lives cut short by someone who saw them only as targets. In court, prosecutors presented detailed evidence, burial sites, victim records, phone logs, his own statements. Families listened in silence, and the judge ruled guilty on all counts. Sentence, death penalty, the harshest punishment. But in South Korea, executions have not been carried out since the late 1990s. So Yu remains on death row. Years after his conviction, prison officials reported that Yu said he was haunted by victims' ghosts, claiming he saw them at night. Some said he refused to meet families of the victims, but offered to tell them how each person died instead. There is no closure in such words, just more shadows. This was not a crime spree fueled by confusion. This was a series of choices, a slow escalation, a life shaped by anger and resentment, turned outward in the worst way possible. He walked among us. He blended in. He chose his victims. And for each of them, someone lost someone forever. In the end, the Raincoat killer remains one of the most chilling reminders that danger does not always announce itself, that ordinary faces can hide extraordinary evil, and that sometimes the most terrifying stories are the ones that are real.